I'm going to start, oddly, by saying that I like donating blood quite a lot. I've been doing it regularly for the last couple decades, about 20 years now, and in that time, probably something over 40 donations. Not as regular as I'd like to. You can do it maybe up to 6 times per year, usually if you schedule it right, but clearly I'm not doing that. I'm not averaging that over the 2 decades. It's a little more disturbing if you think about it in units of like volume of blood. 40 would be about 5 gallons. That's a little gross to think about. But it's something that I like to do, something that makes me feel good. Of course, blood banks test donated blood. They have to, right? They have to make sure that it's safe. Of course, they have the gauntlet of questions in the questionnaire about all sorts of things, about health history, about whether or not you've eaten today, about whether you're feeling well. Naturally, they need to test the blood for bloodborne pathogens. That makes sense to protect the recipients. And also, they should maybe figure out if they need to tell a donor, okay, well, it's great that you're here, and it's really nice, but really, maybe you shouldn't come back for a while, forever, depending on what bloodborne pathogen they find in the blood. One hypothetical that I think from time to time is, well, what if my blood were to test HIV positive? I mean, they're testing for all sorts of things, but certainly this one in addition to many others. How worried should I be? Which is to say, another way of formulating that question more precisely, what's the probability that I actually am HIV positive if a test comes back HIV positive? So let's see if we have any guesses here. Well, to help you frame that question, make it a little more simple, let's, for a moment, sidestep the selection issues pertaining to the fact that I'm a regular blood donor and I go through that gauntlet of questions. So instead, let's think of some random person, random resident of the United States. When this is done with students or with people generally, most of the guesses are above 95%. And in fact, it's often the case that the modal response simply just is 99%. Which is to say, the stated accuracy of the test. Or, well, you just told me the test was 99% accurate, so if the test comes back positive, well, you're positive 99% of the time, right? Well, no. We have 2 important problems at work here. One is that we ignore the base rate, the actual proportion of people who are HIV positive in the population. And then also, we're terrible at applying Bayes' rule, even though it's been around since the 18th century. Well, and of course, the intuition probably may have existed longer, but that's something that we're not really wired to do as human beings. So some more specific numbers. So it's September of 2015. There are now more than 321 million residents of the United States, and there are an estimated 1.1 million of those residents who are HIV positive. So the probability, if you choose a random resident of the United States, the probability that they really are HIV positive is a little over 1/3%. The false negative rate for the relatively cheap enzyme immunoassay screening, the false negative rate is about 0.3%, and then the false positive rate is 1.5%. So they're not the same. There's some asymmetry there. That's kind of interesting. So let's do Bayes' rule and see the right way of thinking about these numbers. But think of this tree as giving us the probabilities there. And so when we run Bayes' rule, we actually get the answer at the end ends up being a little under 19% for those real-world numbers. So if you actually pick a random resident of the United States and they get a positive HIV test, well, they're actually HIV positive probably a little under 19% of the time, which is nowhere near the 95+% that people usually say, or even the 99% that is often that modal answer. The point I'm trying to make in talking about blood and HIV and how we're going to relate this to our topic today is this concept of Baserate neglect. Really the biggest part of the problem there is that especially what leads people to think, oh, it's got to be in the 90% range or 99% even. That's just what you told me the accuracy of the test is. We focus on the signal. We focus on what's new. And we disregard, sometimes completely, that knowledge that we had before, our prior about, well, what is that background rate at which someone might be HIV positive? And this ends up being a very basic, very human tendency that happens essentially always whenever we deal with things that are uncertain. And this has devastating effects sometimes. Clearly, in the case of HIV testing or a diagnosis for an even worse illness, this can dramatically affect people's lives and the lives of their families. If they have the wrong information about this, that can be devastating. So, especially in large classrooms, most of the interactions that we're actually having with students, either face-to-face or mediated through email or some other way in which we're contacting students or being contacted by them, well, we spend most of our time with the students who are seeking our attention or demanding our attention because they seek it or because they require it. And some of those interactions, some of those students who are seeking our attention are those high flyers, the eager, the motivated ones. Those are some of the best moments of our career when they're coming and they're excited. They want to talk about the things that we're excited about. And that's amazing. We can spend lots of time in office hours or elsewhere chatting about those things. On the other hand, there are other students who end up needing our attention in ways that, for us, end up feeling more negative. And this doesn't necessarily mean the things that clearly are negative, like academic dishonesty. But the problem for us is that over time, we fall into the habit of receiving those interactions, both the positive ones and the negative ones, and they end up being how they shape how we think of the entire class. We end up sort of entering this downward spiral where those perceptions, if we think those interactions end up being representative, well, it actually changes our ideas about, reestablishes sort of new priors. And what this does on a daily basis is it wears down on us. And we become, when we interact with our students, we become more suspicious of their motives. We become less patient with them. We become less empathetic than maybe we should be. We're less excited. And over time, as this continues, we just become less happy about our jobs that we love. But over time, it just wears at us. We're also misperceiving something else. We are also falling prey to Baserate neglect, but not just across people, but within people. And what I mean by that is we so very often, not just in the classroom, but we as humans in all domains of our life, make snap judgments about other people based on sometimes just the briefest of interactions. And that's true for our students. When our students do things that are aggravating, that may not be really who they are. It may not be a reflection of their inherent character. This idea is summed up in something called Hanlon's razor. Don't attribute to malice that which can be explained by ignorance. One of my buddies from grad school formulated an alternative to Hanlon's razor, which she calls Hanlon's more optimistic razor, which goes as follows. Don't attribute to malice that which can be explained by misguided good intentions, or non-misguided good intentions, or good but different intentions, or ignorance. And certainly with our students, that's the charitable interpretation that's probably what's going on. Because think about our students. They are by and large decent human beings. And one of the frustrations that we have constantly with them is that many of them just simply have different life goals than we do. And that ends up being the case that, well, they're going to often put economics on the back burner. It's not their highest priority. And their behavior shows that in their attendance. It shows it in the diligence with which they give their readings and their homework assignments, quizzes, exams. We see it all around us. And it's understandable. So what do we do? Well, I think the first thing we need to do is sort of step back and realize what's going on. Have a self-assessment, some introspection about what it is that we're thinking about in terms of what the students are doing, why they're doing it, and making that realization and applying Hanlon's more optimistic razor. Like, oh, okay, I can see where I'm seeing this slice of their lives. That's actually not a representative slice of their lives, even for those students who are terrible, right? Sort of the set of things that I do, among the set of things that I do to sort of help myself with this, is first I want to have an early interaction with my students that reminds me of their humanity. why they're there and what they're doing. And it also reminds me that, it gives me a reality check, like, okay, they are here for something else that isn't their raw passion for economics. So I have them write a letter of introduction, sort of a few paragraphs or a page with a picture to help me learn names where possible. And I learn amazing things. I don't give them constraints. I just, whatever, it's about you, go. Say whatever, maybe where you're from, or why you're here, what you're interested in, what hobbies, it's up to you, free form. And I get all sorts of things. I get amazing things about their interests, about their accomplishments, about their feelings. So other things I do, playing music before lecture. So this is actually one thing that the Econ Ed conference has been very helpful with. A year ago, I attended in Denver, and after that is when I was inspired. I just said, okay, that's it, I'm doing it. I'm going to play music before every lecture, and what I try to do is find a song, some of which are on the lists that Kim was talking about, and I try to relate it to the lecture topic. That's actually kind of a game. I sort of encourage students to okay, figure out how this is connected, because sometimes it's a little more subtle. And what that does is it just puts me in a better mood. I'm having fun. And there's this song I like. I get to choose the songs I play before lecture. I get to choose the songs I like to listen to. And that's great. It puts me in a better mood. Helps me to have those sort of subconscious, the less tangible features that I'm not thinking about. I'm trying to change. I'm trying to ramp up with putting myself in the right place, mentally and emotionally. And I just try to have a good time. And that often involves smiling, having fun examples, laughing, sometimes at myself, rarely crying in lecture, once singing. I did sing in lecture once. That was weird. Not sure I'll repeat that. But yeah, so there are definitely things we can do. Second, ultimately we want to inspire our students. Remember, they're coming with different sets of goals. They're coming with a different idea of why they're there, what they're trying to get out of the class. What would be really great, of course, what we're trying to do, is reach out to them and pull them in and actually show them, no, but look, economics is amazing. And it is all around you. And over time, we want to see if we can get them to share what we see in the discipline and share that passion, and maybe over time transform their goals, transform the way they see things. That really is sort of at a deep fundamental level what education is about, having this process of transformation. And that's not easy. And I would submit that we really cannot completely do that if we're not in a place where we're thinking the best of our students. And that's something that we need to work on. And a few years out now, I've been teaching at the University of Oregon for a few years out of grad school, and I realize that there are these moments where I have to think back and recalibrate and remember, this is amazing. What a great job. What a great opportunity. What brilliant students I'm surrounded with amazing lives.